Welcome to Rising Leaders of New York with your host, David Zwerin of Hill and Moin, LLP. They present to you conversations with today's and future leaders of New York City discussing the challenges and issues relevant to New Yorkers. You can find this show at www.hillmoin.com and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Now here are the hosts of Rising Leaders of New York.
Hello, everybody. My name is David Zwerin. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Hill and Moin. Our primary focus is representing seriously injured victims of accidents on premises, such as buildings or construction sites. And our firm helps to assist those seriously injured victims get fair and adequate compensation. But I'm also the host of the podcast you are listening to, which is Rising Leaders of New York, where every episode I have the opportunity to put on a different hat and get to know and discuss some of the important topics that are before us, New Yorkers, brought to us by some of the really exciting, cutting edge and rising leaders of New York. And today I certainly have one of those on tap for you. I'm very pleased to be joined by Assemblywoman Gina Sillitti of the 16th District out of Nassau County. Assemblywoman, I'll just throw it right over to you. Thank you so much for joining us today on Rising Leaders of New York.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, David. Before we came on the air, I was telling you it's my very first podcast, so I'm very excited to be talking with you and talking about some of the issues that's, affecting Nassau County and Long Island, and get right into it.
Well, I'm very flattered that this is your first podcast you're on. We're pleased to have you, and hope it's not your last podcast, and hope it's not the only time you're here for us.
Me too.
So I know that one thing you've really been dealing with a lot this year is the major change that occurred with the Long Island Railroad when the Grand Central Station opened up. What exactly did that do for people commuting out of your area to Great Neck and Manhasset on the Port Washington line?
Yeah. So, first things first, that the area that I represent, Port Washington, Manhasset, Great Neck. I also have a little bit of Roslyn, North New Hyde Park, Herricks. So the Port Washington line is known for probably being the crown jewel of the Long Island Railroad. I represent a commuter town. A lot of folks moved here from the city for the fast and easy commute to Manhattan. And, the suburban life with, city work life. And so last summer, with the anticipated opening of Grand Central Madison, the Long Island Railroad, MTA, put out a draft train schedule. And let me tell you, David, it went down like a ton of bricks. They eliminated all express service. It was, they wanted to increase ridership in Queens, which I totally appreciate, but it was at the expense of the constituents I represent. And we learned very quickly that this was, something that they didn't want. But I felt that the Long Island Railroad, not just anecdotally on social media or, from me, the politician, they need to hear directly from folks. So one of the things that I did was I created a survey, and it sounds kind of simple, but, I had a palm card. I was at the train stations every morning, and I was literally listening to people, hearing their thoughts, but also not everybody knew this was happening. And so every morning in the month of July, I was out there talking to residents about the changes in the schedule and what it would mean for them. And, unsurprisingly, thousands of people responded to my survey. There was multiple hearings that was organized by the Long Island Railroad to hear, public comment. It actually started as it was just going to be one, but the response was so overwhelming, they actually hosted multiple meetings to hear directly from folks. And of course, the majority of the people were on the Port Washington line, Port Washington, Manhasset, Great Neck. And they just had told their personal stories about what the changes and the elimination of Express would mean to them. And it, obviously, our home values are tied, in part to the great schools, but of course the commuting line. But additionally, it is the lifeblood of our community is our trains. We love our trains so much we built our downtowns around them, and people took this very personally. And I was happy to say that the railroad heard their concerns and made changes.
What kind of
And
changes did the LIR make in
so they
response to all
brought
the complaints?
they heard loud and clear that people wanted express trains to Penn Station, uh, and they brought back in some. Wasn't all, but some. So fast forward to February. The train schedules are going into effect after multiple delays, and one of the things that we had said from the very beginning is that if you see problems, fix it quickly. If you see overcrowding, fix it quickly. Don't wait and linger. Just listen to the riders, pay attention, and make changes as quickly as possible. Well, the first week was a nightmare for folks. um, and I don't know if I'm glutton for punishment, but I went to the trains that first week to listen to people. And again, I wanted to do another survey just because of the success from last year. And I didn't want it to just be social media. I didn't want it to just be new reports. I wanted it to be on the ground, people telling me exactly how they feel. And let me tell you, they told me exactly how they felt about the new train schedules. There was overcrowding, too much space in between times. It was just a whole host of things, or just things didn't line up the way they used to, and missing connections. And so they have some more work to do. That's the bottom line, David. We did the survey. We had another overwhelming response, and the overwhelming response is get back to the drawing board, and we need to fix this. We sent our results over to the Long Island Railroad several weeks ago. Although the survey is ongoing, I have not taken it down because people are still commenting, and we still send them over. And they said they're reviewing it, and so we're staying on top of it. I want the residents to know that it's not, it's not over. We're paying attention, or I'm certainly paying attention, and this is a big deal for folks. It's their lives. It may seem trivial. It's just a train ride, but it's our connection. It's our connection to the city. It's our homes. It's our way of life. It's really the whole. It's the whole package here. When you represent a commuter town, our lives revolve around the trains.
So you definitely don't have to convince me. I'm a former Long Island resident. I used to live in a small town called Malvern, and I said one of the main reasons I lived there for a period of time was because of its accessibility to trains. And I knew going in that it didn't have the greatest line, but if somebody had told me that the line would be gutted, or they would just run one or two lines or one or two trains out of it the entire weekday, I'm sure I wouldn't have moved there at all. Because for those of us who have or have in the past lived out on Long Island and have a job in the city, as you said, that's the lifeblood. It's not just a train ride. It's your life of being overcrowded or having to have a 20, 30, 40 minutes each way. That really adds up and decreases your quality of life.
It does. And you know what else too, David? It's the lifeblood of New York City too. Their economy we're all connected. We're all tied together, right? And so the economy is directly related. I mean, we've seen this. Billions of dollars have been lost by people working from home. And so you want my constituents to be coming back into the city, right? You want them to get on the trains. You want them to spend money on lunch and dinner and, all these different things, and be back in office buildings. But when you make the commuting experience so difficult, people think twice, be like, well, I'll just continue to work from home. I don't need to go into the city and deal with this nonsense. So, there's this balance, right? And so, and I know the governor wants everyone to come back in the city. I know, the MTA and the Long Island Railroad, they want their ridership back. So, we have to make it, so that people want to, and that they're able to, and that it's, is commuting a pleasant experience? Does it have to be all sunshine and rainbows? No, but it can't be the way it is now. And it has to be better, and they deserve it. for the amount of money that they pay for, the tickets and everything else. It's just, this is our job, right? This is the job, is to bring, you're the Long Island Railroad, get people from point A to B, but not just about bringing people from point A to point B, to bring it with, a pleasant commuting experience. And not for nothing, Grand Central is lovely. Oh my gosh, I don't know if you've been there. I took the train last month. Was something nearby. It's beautiful. It was a beautiful train ride. It's a beautiful station. But ridership is still, going to Penn, and we're seeing that it's, it's hard to change habits, right? And you're going to Penn, and that's where you've always gone, and that's where you're going to continue to go. And a lot of the office buildings are there, in that area of Midtown. So we have some work to do. Long Island Railroad has some work to do, and we're paying attention, and we're staying on top of them.
What kind of balance do you think can be struck? Because as someone who's lived in both Nassau County and Queens, I think it's very important that the Long Island Railroad is servicing both areas. And it's really critical that the people in Nassau County aren't feeling dismissed and that it's all just about Queens. But as someone in Queens who likes the idea of maybe more train stopping at Forest Hills or Kew Gardens or Woodside, to give an extra option to people like myself who want to have an easier commute out of central Queens into the city, how do you service both of them?
Yeah, no, I mean, excellent question. It's not us versus them, right? So few things. I mean, obviously more trains. Bottom line is we need more trains. The issue that we're having on our end, east of Great Neck, is there's a few things. We have single track. So, that sort of limits the amount of trains that we push out. And then also, part of the Grand Central project a decade ago was expansion at the Port Washington Railroad line. And that, for a host of reasons years ago, didn't get done. That project is sort of back on the table. Discussions are ongoing about how to expand the track so we can park more trains and push more out, right? So we're limited of the amount of trains that we can push out. But at the same time, David, we don't need to stop at every single, and that was the problem when the original last year schedules came out. They stopped at every single stop in Queens. We don't have to do that, right? You can stop maybe at Bayside or, something or other where people can get on, but we don't have to stop at every single one. Now, is there locals? There's always locals. There's locals in the previous schedule where folks from Queens can hop on and get into the city. This is in Nassau County, it's our only way, right? We don't, Long Island Railroad said it's either that or driving cars, and we don't want more cars on the road, right? So, our options are somewhat limited. But I think that we can do, and I keep saying we, but I use we in a general term, Long Island Railroad. Some simple scheduling changes, I think, would make for a better commute. Right now, in some of the prime time spots between, the 7 to 8 and the 8 to 9, there's not enough. Right. And so what you're seeing is people crowded on these 1 or 2 trains to get them into the city before 9 o'clock. So now there's like a train, one that leaves later in the 8 o'clock hour. It's, I think, like 8:30. If that train, and that gets in after 9, so a lot of people don't take it. They're all cramming on the 7:54, I think it is, out of Port Washington. Perhaps if that later train was maybe 15 minutes earlier and it got in before 9 o'clock, then you can separate, those 7:54 people, which, by the way, that should even be earlier. There's these huge gaps, these huge unnecessary gaps, in my opinion, unnecessary. And my constituents also agree. It's like a 7:14, 7:15 time, then this big gap till the end of the 7 o'clock hour. And then that's the last one that gets you in before 9, David. And it's packed. It's packed like you wouldn't believe. You got parents dropping their kids off at school, everybody running to the train. You got a train coming in, train going out. It's madness. Little tweaks here and there. And then there's also the early folks, the people that have to get in by 8 o'clock. You got the finance, folks that work on Wall Street, and then you got a lot of people who work in schools. They need to be in by 8 o'clock. And there isn't a train right now that will get them in to get them at their desk by 8 o'clock. They have to do something in the 6 o'clock hour. This was unheard of before. So again, it goes back to quality of life. It goes back to timing of schedules, the amount of trains we're obviously working on. But I think there could be some scheduling tweaks, some low-hanging fruit that we hope that the Long Island Railroad, the MTA, will look at to get at the heart of what's going on here. They did add more train cars, which was very helpful to kind of relieve some of the stress of the overcrowding, but it's still crowded. We're still seeing pictures. People are still sending me, tagging me, on Twitter and social media. Um, Take a look at this train, same as before, nothing changed. So that's what I hope they'll, are considering, and we'll listen to the folks again, like they did last year, and make these necessary changes.
Another topic I wanted to talk to you about, Assemblywoman, is voter accessibility or registration. I know that you've either been very vocal in co-sponsoring or working with some of your colleagues on a lot of bills that I think are under consideration in the current session to either make voting more accessible or more fair. One of the ones I believe you worked on or maybe were supporting was the Electronic Registration Information Center. Can you tell us a little bit about that bill?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, just a step back quickly is I have a background in elections. I worked at the Board of Elections. So I kind of know, how the cookies are made, so to speak, and sort of how the process works. And, we're, by the way, for folks listening, we're very lucky here in Nassau County. We have an excellent Board of Elections. Everything is bipartisan. And that's, I think, an important thing for folks to know is that anything that comes in, whether it's a voter registration form, whether it's an absentee ballot application, no matter what it is, there's two sets of eyes on everything. A Democrat checks it, a Republican checks it. And nothing goes out or in without those two things happening. And both sides are take this job very seriously and, working towards that goal of a fair and accessible election. And my thing from always is that we should make voting easier, not harder. It is our right as American citizens. It is our duty to pay attention to what our elected officials are doing and support them when they're doing good and kick them out when they're not, right? And we've seen that over the years, that increase in voter participation is a good thing. We've had early voting that started in 2019. There was a little bit of resistance at first, but you know what? Not everybody can vote on election day. You never know what's going to happen. I remember one year there was a train that was late in Syosset and there was an accident and all these people were on their way home and never got a chance to vote because they got in after 9 o'clock. They didn't think about getting an absentee ballot application. They're like, I'm going to be home later. But you have early voting now. People can go 10 days before election day and pick a time that's convenient for them. And there's guaranteed a location that is close to them. But going back to this electronic sort of national database, one of the things that we've heard over and over is, the rolls. How are the voter rolls? Are the voter rolls right? How can we make the voter rolls more accurate? And by the way, there's so many steps and processes along the way that do make sure that the voter rolls are correct. But one of the things that it's this electronic registration national, where basically you can see. So say you moved to, another state and re-registered and you would now be in this, let's say Delaware database. We can check, you can check monthly, you can check, the Board of Elections can check and, kind of compare roles and make sure that the data doesn't overlap and that there is accuracies and all these different things. What we try to do in New York and Nassau County, and you may have gotten it in the mail, I'm not sure how they do it in the city, but you'll get like a card And it's kind of a nondescript card. It's white and red letters, white, red, and black. And it's from the Nassau County Board of Elections. And it says, or City Board of Elections or whatever, and it says, this is who you are, this is where you live, this is where your polling location is, blah, 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 blah. And this is, we call it like a voter check, right? A voter check card. If you get something in the mail that is not you, or you get something at your house that is not you, that means that there is something that's incorrect, on the other end. Maybe somebody moved and you're like, oh yeah, that was a person who used to live in my house. So you can just send that back to the Board of Elections and be like, this person moved. But with this other system, we can follow, right, the voter better and see that, that they did register someplace else, or they passed away in another state, or whatever the case may be. There are these checks and balances that happen throughout New York with, Department of Health records when somebody passes away and all these different things. This is just another layer, right? Another layer to make sure that the voter rolls are accurate. So unfortunately, over the last few years that we've seen, people are, some are losing faith or have lost faith in the election process. Whether it's somebody telling them that they should lose faith, or they just don't understand how it works. These are just additional tools that's saying, listen, we want to make sure everything's perfect, and this is just another way to do that. So that's one of the things that we're pushing along. One thing that I actually have personally of mine is it actually came from a constituent. It came from a Republican poll worker. I'm a Democrat, Republican poll worker. She brought it to me as her idea. When you go to the voting booth, sometimes you're seeing that gigantic ballot for the first time. I was number 21 on the end of the ballot, which is insane. So you had, the governor was number 1, and Gina Sillitti, she was number 21 on your ballot, and you had all these people in between. And so people go and they see it for the first time. And they're like, what the heck is this thing? And it's this giant ballot with all these names that they don't know. So one of the things that I would like to see is an opportunity for people to view their ballot ahead of the election. When you go into the voter database and you type in your name for New York State Board of Elections, you type your name, your birth date, and your voter record will come up. It'll have your name, it'll have where you're voting, and all these different things. I want to create this next level. And this next level will be a digital view. Obviously you can't print it. Digital view of your ballot. So you have an informed voter that can look and see, oh, all these different candidates. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, look at this judge, or, whatever the case may be. Or I didn't know this election was happening. I know that person. And they, maybe they can research that person and, find out a little bit more about them. And then when they go in on election day, their choice is clear. They've seen the ballot before, and there's no confusion, and they can go in and out and have a pleasant voting experience. All these little things that we can do to make voting easier, making it less stressful, we should be doing. And so that's, those are the kinds of things that I'm focused on.
What is the reaction in Albany to some of these ideas on both sides of the aisle? Is there a willingness to make voting more accessible? What is the legislature interested in doing, and where do you expect resistance?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, good and bad. Albany, in the Assembly, we can introduce up to 10,000 bills a year, which is an incredible amount of legislation. And we only pass, as you know, a few hundred every session. So there are a lot of election bills that unfortunately, don't always go anywhere. There is some pushback, from the other side. But there has been, change, can be difficult, but I remember there was a lot of pushback with early voting, and now it's incredibly popular and it's all working out and everybody likes it. Maybe it was last week or the week before, it was the end of session, and we were talking about some election bills, and one of them was no excuse absentee voting. And it was a constitutional amendment that unfortunately failed in 2021. Part of the reason that it failed was that there was a multi-million-dollar misinformation campaign by conservative mega donors, saying that, there was fraud and, all these different things. And with a low turnout election, it unfortunately failed. No excuse absentee voting, the constitutional amendment. I worked at the Board of Elections. So, like I said, I've seen these forms before, and I'm sure you have too, and your viewers have as well. It's a form. There's different categories that you need to fill out. And the top category, section 1, why are you going to be away? You're sick, you're on vacation, you're out of town for work, all these different things. And then the second section is your name, then third, and blah, 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 and then you sign it. Basically, what the change would have done was eliminated just the top section. You still would have had to fill out a form. It still would have had to been reviewed by a Democrat and a Republican. It still would have gone through the same exact process. You just wouldn't have had to put an excuse. But, it fear is a motivating factor, right? And so people were scared. And, we just had come off the 2020 election where there was a lot of talk of abuse and fraud that obviously is not true. So that people were sensitive to it. And unfortunately, it failed. But, access to voting and making voting easier for working people, for, people who commute into the city, the Wall Street folks. It shouldn't be a dirty word. We should be making voting easier and accessible. And if somebody wants to be able to vote by mail, they should be able to, and we shouldn't be giving them a hard time to do it. So those are the kind of things that, we're working on in Albany. And yes, we are getting pushback. But at the end of the day, I think, part of it is politics and optics. And, when you actually sit down with folks and explain it to them, they see, oh, well, that's fine. It's not a big deal. That seems fairly simple enough. And it is. And it is.
Do you find people's perspectives are changing on some of these bills regarding making voting easier or voter accessibility as we get farther and farther away from the 2020 election? Or are things just hardening, especially as we get closer to our next federal election, which may have the same two candidates on the ballot and the same concerns as the last one?
God. It's cyclical, David, I think. I think that as right now, I don't think folks are really paying attention much. But I think when we get closer to the election time, when we get closer to November, you'll probably hear, about things. But I haven't heard from my constituents. Nobody's called me up and said, why are you doing this? Also, conversely, I haven't had a groundswell of, regular constituents call me, but certainly people have been like, oh, I heard about this. Sounds like a good idea. And, things like that. Some advocacy groups, obviously, people who are advocating for, better accessibility and better, ease of voting are supportive of a lot of the measures that we're doing. But there's so many bills that could be, so great for making, voting easier and more accessible, and hopefully they can get, the attention maybe next year, perhaps, and folks can learn more about them. But I'm pretty proud of some of them myself.
What are some of the other interesting bills that you're working on or co-sponsoring that you think might be coming up for a discussion or passage this year?
Well, so not so much this year. Session is pretty much wind down. I am going up to Albany today, though. We have some, cleanup work that we need to do. We literally just ran out of hours in a day. When you hear the term, there's not enough hours in the day. Well, literally, the New York State Assembly didn't have enough hours in the day. And so we're going back and we're going to be in session the next couple of days. Just, nothing crazy, just, some cleanup, of bills. So I'm going to be working on some things over the summer. In addition to representing a commuter district, I also, it's Long Island. We have a lot of, police and firemen. So I do have a couple of bills that I'm working on with them, having to do with recruitment and retention. One of the things we're all volunteer on Long Island and a lot of suburbs throughout New York State. We don't have paid fire. We rely on the service of our neighbors to take care of us. And but there is a recruitment issue. There is a retention issue. It's, it's not the same as it was. Also over by me, it's expensive to live here, right? And so you have, kids that, will enter the fire department in high school and, maybe they'll do some stuff over the summer in college, but when it comes, time to move back home, they may move back home and continue at the firehouse, or they move someplace else. That's more affordable for unfortunately for a young person just starting out. So one of the bills that I was looking at is we have a lot of men and women in the fire service that also happen to work for a government agency, whether it's the town, the state, the county. And so what we thought was, what if they got some credit for the credit of the work that they do could go towards their service, their retirement service. So one of the bills that I have that's in the hopper is if you do 5 years of volunteer service in one of the volunteer fire departments, EMT, etc., then you get one service credit, up to three. So 15 years, 3 credits. That's somebody retiring early, all these different things. We're trying to give folks, additional incentives to want to join and stay. Not just join, but stay. And so that's one of the, fire department bills that I'm working on. Also, to that end, having to do with service is a military buyback. Currently, if you have, I believe it's 3 years, you get 1 year of credit. 3 years in the military, 1 year credit. We want, also brought by our Nassau police folks, to increase it to 4 years. So 4 years of service, and you get credit. So another tool for people who have served our country, and now they can use that credit towards their retirement in the police force. And then the third bill that I'm working on with our first responders, and well, this is specifically to the police, is it's having to do with crisis counseling. I don't know if you're familiar with the Joseph P. Dwyer peer-to-peer counseling. It is in our military. There was a young man from Long Island, from Mount Sinai, a guy named Joseph Dwyer, Joey Dwyer. I actually lived in Mount Sinai, and I knew him. And he came back from Iraq, had severe PTSD. He died. And so there was a program started, peer-to-peer counseling, where you can talk to another peer, somebody who has gone through the same experiences as you, and that you can get the help that you need. So we're looking to do something very similar with our police force, and it requires legislation. And I'm working with our Nassau County PBA on this bill. This is something that they are very passionate about, and I look forward to working on it with them over the summer and just getting the nitty-gritty details of it, and hopefully bring some attention to it. And come January, we can have a swell of support, and we can have these conversations, because we want our police officers, our first responders, to deal with any kind of issues that they see. I mean, we saw in recent years, more and more police officers committing suicide. We need to get them the help that they need, not only for themselves, they could also be better, better public servants, right? So this is a piece of legislation, obviously, that I'm working on, and hopefully we can see some light next year on these. But it's a lot of these bills come from the public. Some come from your brain, but for the most part, it's people. It's people that I meet on the streets that give me ideas. It's like I said, that woman, that poll worker. I had a mobile office hour. I take kind of my show on the road, so to speak, and she came to sit with me, and that was her idea. So you never know where legislation can come from, but a lot of times it just comes from the people that I meet every day, and it's like, I have this idea for a bill. What do you think? I'm like, I don't know. Let's take a look at it and see if we can figure it out. And that's a pretty cool part of my job.
That's very interesting. And I guess you never know which bill is going to break through with the right amount of support at the right time and be one of those few hundred that make the cut. If not, if you're in those 9 or 10,000 that that don't, there's always next year.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, how do you figure out how to make your bill stand out? I'm in my third year, right? So my first year was kind of like the COVID year, 2021. It was all remote. And then last year, kind of getting your feet wet, figuring things out. You're finally back in person. And then, of course, you have the election. So that's kind of looms over. So then this year, I felt like I was really kind of hitting the ground running. So we're going to work over the summer and kind of figure out what we can do to make our bill stand out and kind of get, the groundswell support from folks and be like, hey, this is something that Long Island wants, and it's not just me, right? It's not just me pushing. It's because at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about the residents, it's about my constituents. So how can we get this over the finish line for them?
Well, they all sound amazing, particularly your support for the Dwyer Project. As an attorney who deals with a lot of people who have traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, I've seen it very real in my clients, the amount of stress, particularly when they've gone through a life-changing, catastrophic event that just never leaves them, how crippling it can be. And having that kind of support for people who are going through that kind of trauma is really very important, and something that our first responders, that police officers badly need and certainly deserve, and it's really important work.
Thank you.
So with that, Assemblywoman Gina Sillitti, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Rising Leaders of New York. If your constituents or anybody throughout the great state of New York wants to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
Oh my gosh, of course. Well, P.S. time flies when you're having fun. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I'm online, I'm on social media, but if you just want to shoot me an email or give me a call, my telephone number here in Nassau is 516-482-6966. And my email address is Silitti, GSILLITTIG @nyassembly.gov. I'm super accessible. Like I said, you can find me online, shoot me an email, or just Google my name and I pop up everywhere.
That is definitely true. I did not have any trouble finding any media publishers or great tweets about you. That's a good thing about being an open book. It makes for a nice, frank, open conversation. As for me, my name is David Swerin. I am the senior trial attorney here at Hill and Moin. If you want to reach me to say anything about this podcast or any of my podcasts, or if you are seriously injured at someone's premises on a construction site or a motor vehicle accident, anything like that, you can reach me and the attorneys here at Hill and Moin at 212-668-6000. My email is DZ as in zebra, WERIN @hillmoin.com, or you can reach us at the web at hillmoin.com. Until next week, everybody, my name is David Swerin, and I will be joined then by another rising leader of New York. Goodbye, everybody.
You've been listening to Rising Leaders of New York, hosted by David Swerin of Hill and Moin, LLP. You can catch prior episodes at www.hillmoin.com and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing this show with others.